Ontological Mysterium is the fifth full-length album from Horrendous, a sort of Pennsylvania and I think South Carolina-based progressive death metal band who kind of famously really took off in the early 2010s, kind of 2009 or so, when they put out a couple of very memorable recordings with the Chills, and their demo before that was quite big. That was kind of stepping from the MySpace age into the Facebook age in terms of just promoting bands like this. And this was like a notable sort of Swedish death metal influenced thing that evolved into a sort of a melodic and progressive style band over time. I love to go through their discography because I think records like Ecdysis and the 2015 record that came right after it, that you could tell that it was a rapid point of evolution, and they really got it right with Anareta in 2015, and from there they kind of moved on to bigger avenues, and the result of all of that work was Idol. And I emphasize Idol up front because I think that was the high point for the band. I think that was where all the things that they were leading up to that point really got emphasized, and they made this big, dramatic, voluminous, and just very unique death metal record in the progressive death metal style that still felt classic. It still felt uniquely atmospheric and melodic in their own touch. So I love that record. I liked it even more after I reviewed it, and I continue to like it more now today. So I was very much hyped for what Ontological Mysterium would be as a follow-up. And it's been a few years. It's been about 5 years now, and we'll cut into one of the songs here and see, maybe get a glimpse of what's different, just for a second. So there's quite a lot to take stock of on this record. I think that first of all, it is a little bit more of a progressive metal record in some sense, but it still has those elements of, 90s death metal, progressive death metal, technical thrash metal, melodic death metal. All these things are still feeding into their vernacular. They've obviously taken influences from classic progressive rock and just heavy rock in general to put together grooves and vignettes that make sense as derivations from the normative stages of death metal. And what we get from this record is really a lot of shotgunned ideas next to a lot of ideas that are sort of smeared about by a need for change and a different showing. So what I gathered is that this is a way of Horrendous finding it's kind of a potency check. It's a vibe check. We're getting down to the best of what they do, the most distinct things that they do, and getting it all rapid fire in a couple of quite big and focused songs, and a couple of songs that are a little bit unfocused and jammed and sort of bleeding around the edges to keep things interesting. And it doesn't necessarily equate to something Cynic-esque, but there aren't that many bands that have sort of taken that next step to push outside of what they're doing. So a lot goes into this record, and I find that it doesn't it really didn't read up front as a successor to Idol. It sounded like a reduction of Idol. It felt like they took all the bluster and the drama and the sort of showmanship out of it, and just focused in on a kind of tunnel vision through this journey, as it were. And that meant that some of these songs are a little bit throwaway. They're a little bit short. They're just interstitial. And I think going from track 1 to about track 4, there's a little bit of a liminal space experience. It's just a teleport from point to point where nothing really hammers in until that third or fourth song hits. Now, I think Praetorian Hymn is certainly a very strong song to catch the ear at that point, and I don't want to downplay Neon Leviathan's like fiery kind of thrashing side, but there wasn't a lot to be excited about going through this album the first time because it was pushing past without the impact that I was looking for. Eventually, the it took a while. Uh, the record sunk in, and I think Cult of Sado, um, however you'd pronounce that, it did eventually warm up the album to me. I did start to feel more of the sort of death thrashing side of the band, and understand that they were. This is a very experimental record in terms of harmonies, vocals. It's unfocused because they're putting so much into it, and it's sort of the record of a thousand voices. They've all got different styles and registers, and is do they repeat the same scream twice on this record? I mean, not really, and that's pretty interesting the way they do that. But it doesn't feel like they've evolved the production value too drastically, so that this will alienate anyone who liked Idol and its sound, especially in terms of the rhythm section, which is crisp and a little bit wobbly, but still set right in that sort of technical death thrash sweet spot that you want for crisp and defined performances. So I like that quite a bit. I think the bass is a little bit more rounded out this time around. It just sort of gives a I almost wish they'd apply that to the last record, so it felt a little bit less loose and kind of wobbling in the distance. Um, Otherwise, really, yeah, I don't know what other notes I have. The title track pulls it together. Overall, I feel like I do like what Horrendous is doing nowadays, but I felt like Idol was a home. It was a safe space. It was it was the place where we kind of found what Horrendous had always wanted to be. They'd broken out of the carapace, and that was what they were. And now with this, it almost feels like they're still building out exactly what that form is, exactly what horrendous is. And this is a defining kind of point in that evolution that still feels like it has a ways to go towards something that is as completely dramatic as Idol was. And I would kind of liken it to Ecdysis, where we definitely saw them breaking out of that shell and doing something new. And that seems to be what this record is doing, for me at least, is it's cracking open some new possibilities. So anyway, I won't ramble on too much longer. It is a good record. It is one of my higher recommendations for August. I did buy this record myself and all that. So obviously I'm talking about it because I'm a big fan of this band and have been since probably their first demo even. So it's very much worth checking out if you're a fan of this type of progressive death metal, and it's a pretty unique band with an interesting voice that is quite modern. So check it out. It's out already, and worth giving a shot.